Hey everybody, Brad and Zach with Full Spectrum Survival. We are going on a wool blanket overnight, kind of mirroring the frontiersman style of overnights where they would take with them a very sound, somewhat heavy, but minimalistic set of survival gear. So for shelter tonight, all we have is our tarps, our wool blankets. And Zach, because a father always cares, I'm giving him the luxury of a Gore-Tex bivy bag that he can use if necessary. The frontiersmen, I think, is something that we all need to mirror because they traveled immense distances.
And were successful.
And were successful, that's right. And they did it with a very independent gear set. They knew exactly what they needed. They brought everything with them, hunted along the way, found some water along the way.
Watering supplies.
That's right, and made it to their site. So let's do our part. And let's go find a site to set up, and we'll see you guys in a minute.
It's a nice spot down there.
So we found a pretty nice site. It has a nice even horizontal ground. Then you've got a little bit of a drop off over there.
Checked for widowmakers.
Check for widowmakers, right? We are still on our property. We have a couple of acres here. We have an acre down there. And then all the neighbors said, hey, feel free to use it. We know you're going to be out there, you know, just go make camp wherever you want to. It's very, this mountainous region at the southern end of the Appalachian Trail is pretty much exactly what our whole property is like, where it's just woods, more woods, and occasionally a cabin. So we're going to set up site here. We're getting down to 39 or 40 degrees tonight, and
Pretty nice with the campfire.
pretty nice. Yeah, I think we'll set up a reflective campfire and have a good night. So we'll see you guys in a minute. So Zach was carrying his whole set inside of his Gore-Tex bivy, and I'm carrying the water and my set. So let's take a look inside and see what we've got. This is a wool blanket. As many of you will know, there is great insulative properties to wool. Just to stop any future water from getting on it, I'm going to go ahead and unwrap Zach's bivy and then put my wool blanket on top of it and kind of show you what we're working with today. Now the frontiersmen, they would bring with them the equivalent of $22,000 worth of gear. So obviously it was only the wealthy that were making these trips, and the servants and the help that they were able to bring with them. So I try to keep that in mind, that we are very fortunate today to be able to acquire long-term survival goods, acquire transportation, things like that we can get all across the world, all across our continents, for much less than the steep curve that they had at that time. Go ahead.
Because back then there weren't automobiles, there weren't planes, there was horses and feet.
That's right, you had your beasts of burden, and that's kind of what you were stuck with. So I've got my wool blanket here. Inside I've got my cook kit, some gloves, which I'll be using in just a minute, my food pouch that my lovely wife Kelly sewed me, fat wood, and this is one of the modern things that I have on here, is I have some Gorilla Tape just wrapped around the fat wood. And one of the mottos that me and Zach are going to start kind of living our outdoors lives by is to enjoy technology but embrace nature. And what I mean by that is there's so many great things that are just, so usable in today's world, like tape, like modern cordage, things like that, like this sil nylon tarp.
There's some things that you can't replicate in nature.
Yeah, and you'd also be making it harder for yourself to survive by trying to forego those things. So we're going to enjoy the things of technology, but also embrace nature. It looks like Bree is going to
Camp out with us.
camp out with us, so that'd be okay too. So let's get our Yeah, let's get our tarp set up and see what camp looks like.
What is that?
Big old snail.
It's kind of crazy how big that is. Okay, fire pit's done, 1 rock. That one and then our one from down there by the campsite. And our fire pit would be done. Imagine how that would feel on your toe.
Well, we're gonna have to clean that one up against.
Tombstone. One or two more.
All right, now we are going to start our fire like the frontiersmen as well. Zach collected a satchel full of pine needles, which
Full in resin,
full of resin. That's right.
so they're easily combustible.
Now, guys, it has rained
Yes.
for the past 20 hours before we got out here, and everything is wet. The ground, look, I mean, the ground is soaked. There's just a soaking wet mess out here. So it's going to make fire making that much harder. We're nearing the end of the day here. The dew is probably not too far off. The rain is probably not too far off. What we'll do with our shelter is just lower it down if the rain comes, almost sandwich it into ourselves. We had to actually turn our shelter around. Why is that?
The wind was blowing into our tarp.
That's right. The wind was actually coming into our tarp. The wind had changed direction, so we had to adjust the shelter. Real easy with this kind of setup.
Just flipped it around.
Yep, just flipped it, kind of inverted it inside out, and set it back up.
You want me to talk about all of our gear that we brought?
Sure.
So we brought our fire making kit. We have flint and steel and some char cloth. Big giant bottle of water.
Yep. Now, if we run out of water, where is water?
The river just down there.
That's right.
Or a slingshot.
Yep.
For long range protection.
In case we see
And
any,
hunting.
what have we seen lately?
Lots and lots of squirrels. and 1 chipmunk.
That's true. Our cat got a chipmunk.
Twice. It got away the first time, and then he caught it again.
Yep. So what I'm doing while Zach's doing that is I'm getting together some shavings of fat wood. What I'm going to be doing is catching a spark with the Flint and Steel into char cloth, putting that char cloth right here on the tin, sandwiched down by some drier pine needles, wait for that to ignite, and then supply our fire.
Especially after big rains and downpours, you don't want to get the pine needles off the ground.
Why is that?
Because they'll just have soaked in all the moisture. And if they're on the tree or on a down tree, the water will just drip off of them. It won't soak into them like if it's on the ground.
That's right.
So we have our grungy soap.
Our grungy soap. Yep, we've got our bar soap. I mean, cleanliness is very important. It's going to keep you from getting sick. It's going to keep you from getting other people sick. It's going to keep you from having bacteria on your hands. It's just hugely important.
So what would the frontiersmen have used for soap? They couldn't have had bars of soap.
Sure. Yeah, they would have had their bars of soap.
Yeah.
Plus, they would be making soap on the road with animal fat and
right.
ash.
And lots of rope.
Yeah.
And paracord.
Replacing the things that are hard to find in nature is something that the frontiersmen did and something that we strive to do. Cordage is very hard to make on the road. Not impossible. We have muscadine vines here, we have some other things, but you're not going to get the tensile strength that you're going to get out of cordage.
Stock up on cordage.
Yeah, cordage is huge. We use a lot of 550 paracord here. It can be budgeted and purchased in 1,000-foot spools.
So the frontiersmen, they would have, while they're staying in one spot, they would have had people making rope, right?
If it was necessary, yeah.
If it was necessary for travels.
That's right.
And in my pockets, I have tea bag.
Yep, got a tea
So I'm
bag.
gonna boil tea. And do I have anything in my baby bag?
In your baby bag, you pack.
Cooking
You pack your
utensils.
cooking gear, your utensils. What kind of food you bring?
Soup. And did you bring your grits?
I brought oats.
Oats.
I think I might have grits too, but I like oats.
You know what oats and grits is really good with? Slim Jims.
Any kind of beef jerky, really.
Meat. It's because it's so variable because it's just plain. So you could put salt in it to make it salty, sugar to make it sweet. There's so many things you can add with it.
Now, people watching, Zach, they might say, my collection of pine resin dust is overkill. It might be. I might only need a quarter of this, but why do you think I'm collecting so much?
To have more than enough to make sure you get that fire going before the dew drops.
That's right. So if I'm going to spend the time right now making this fire,
You're gonna make it so it lasts.
I'm going to make it so that it produces a fire. If I was to go about it get only half the job done, and I wasn't able to make a fire with that, then I would have wasted all of that daylight. Could start raining, the dew could start dropping.
It would make it that much harder to make it.
That's right. Every second, literally every second, past the peak of the day, where it's the hottest and the UV is the brightest, it becomes that much harder to make a fire.
Yeah.
All of the conditions are changing. All of the variables that can make fire making hard are changing, and it just becomes harder and harder to make that fire.
So the frontiersmen, they would have had handmade tools.
A lot of handmade tools. Yeah.
What kind of tools would they have had?
Their most important tools were their animal husbandry tools, horseshoes, things like that, replacing horseshoes. Their knife was very important, an axe and a saw. Those are the things that were very important.
Now, would everybody have a knife?
Yes, every person would have a knife, including mom and the children. The men would have an axe, and the knives, like the women's knives, they were utilized for everything. So you wouldn't
Food
have like your
preparation.
kitchen knives like we have today. You would just have your knife.
And just How would you remove all bacteria that's on your knife to use it for cooking? Just stick it in the fire?
Yeah, sticking over the fire would be fine.
Although you don't want to stick it in the fire when you have all this rope on the handle.
Well, you could still put the end in the fire.
That's true. Yes, sharpening stone, and even I have a knife.
Yep, you have your knife.
Which I recently sharpened.
Should have your sheath with it.
Yep, when I was pulling it out of my pocket, the sheath came out.
So what would you guys bring? If you were a frontiersman, what would you bring with you? What about your children? A lot of people made trips with their children, with their entire families. It's the only way that new life began at a new site. One of the only ways. And so what would you bring with you?
Would you probably bring handmade toys for the children?
Of course.
Just to keep them entertained.
Mm-hmm.
Bartering supplies.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you store your water?
Right.
How much food would you bring? For how much did you prepare for because if you don't know how long you're going to be staying in a certain area, do you have time to hunt for food at your area, or do you need to bring food with you?
Yeah, good considerations. Okay, so we're going to...
fat wood, of course.
Yep, fat wood. So we're going to start our fire lighting, flint and steel. I've got my steel here, my flint. This is actually local flint. We have some more local flint that we found right here on our property, right here.
And on our other acre down there.
Yep. So I'm going to catch the spark on top of my char cloth, and I'm going to put the lit ember right on top of my fat wood dust. I'm going to cover it with my pine needles, and it's always important to wear gloves. Your hands and your eyes are your hands, your feet, and your eyes are your most important tools. So what would you do if you hurt your hand? Then you're stuck with using one hand. You are literally at 50% efficiency. Same thing. Stuck using just one foot, all those things.
One eye.
That's right. So I don't want to risk blistering myself by not wearing gloves.
Because then you're at that much lower efficiency.
That's right.
How easy that was. It would probably not have been that easy to get that char cloth to light hour from now.
The char cloth, as long as I kept it safe, would have been okay. The problem would have been everything else.
Getting that ember to light
That's
other
right.
material.
Once I get this started, will you grab that and we'll get it over the fire?
Sure.
Now I'm using tin, so I'm able to hold the back a little bit longer than I otherwise would be able to. There we go. Got ignition. Will you grab the camera? Now look at that. I was able to get ignition, and I'll be able to save my char cloth.
And some of your... you pour that on.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't start?
Now you see, there's a danger. I saved everything rather than wasting it, and luckily my fire went out, but I've still got my lit char cloth here. I've still got my pine needles.
How come luckily the fire went out?
No, I'm saying luckily I saved everything.
Ah, yes.
You back up a little? Now that just goes to show you that it's just that much harder to make a fire on a day like today.
Mm-hmm. Now, what would the frontiersmen use for clothing? How would they make their clothing?
Hold on, let's get the fire going good.
Okay.
And then we'll talk about that.
Think we have enough wood?
Oh, we will need to add some. Yep, because it's so wet, the dampness of everything around is just sucking everything from the fire. But we made the decision to make the fire right here, right next to this large down pine, and so it'll make it just that much easier for us.
Imagine where we'd be without having discovered fire.
We wouldn't be very far.
Nope.
And we wouldn't be right here, I can guarantee you that.
So the frontiersmen.
Mm-hmm.
At what age do you think the children would have been given adult responsibilities? Hunting food?
12?
Yeah. Got a spider on that one.
Alright guys, so we are going to, before we lose too much light, we're going to go ahead and eat. We worked up a little bit of an appetite. What are you having?
Soup.
Soup. And do you remember what I'm having? Oats and beef jerky. Oats are one of the most versatile foods for me as a camp food. They're lightweight. Of course you have to add water back in, but with almost everything, except like Zach's soup, you're going to have to add some water back in. I'm okay with that. We always make sure we know where our water sources are, and we try to keep everything, you know, near that. Kelly, my lovely wife, and Zach's lovely mother, sewed me some food pouches out of some recycled material that we had. And so I keep my oats in here. I also have a pouch with
Cooking utensils?
nope, I also have a pouch with raisins, sugar, salt, and I think grits. And like Zach said, cooking utensils.
And I've got my spoon. Another thing that Mama sold us.
That's right, I added some old BDUs. I lost a lot of weight, and so I have some BDUs that used to fit, and then now they don't fit anymore. So what do you guys bring with you on your camping trip? Zach, what do you think the pioneers brought with?
Probably lots of oats.
What else?
Oats. They probably took some if they caught any animals from their last site. They
Okay.
probably would have brought meat from that.
Okay. What else do you think?
Oats. They probably would have brought herbs to put in the oats.
Okay.
They probably would have brought seasonings
Yes.
and fruits, probably.
Yes.
Fruits
Do you
and
think they would have
vegetables.
brought just plain old fruits and vegetables, or would they have dried them?
They probably would have dried them and fermented them.
Good. Yeah, fermented is a smart thing. Oh, that fire's hot, isn't it?
Quite hot.
My goodness.
Like, if you step like 5 steps over there, you're cold.
That's right. So it'll keep us nice and warm tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Now, pioneers would have brought with them cheese.
Really?
Yep.
How would they have gotten the milk? Would they have cows?
They would have brought cheese with them, already aged and ready to travel.
Oh.
They would have also brought with them flour.
Flour.
They
Like
would
bread?
have- Yep, they would have been prepared to make flour on the path.
Would they have had would they have wheat?
Yep. And just really anything they could get their hands on. So what would you guys bring with you if you were making a big trip? What about for evacuating? What would you bring with you?
Probably things that can last a while, like canned foods.
Mhm.
Things that don't really go bad.
Yeah.
You cook the Slim Jim in with it?
Cook the Slim Jim in with it. Zach says, hey, what are you going to do that for? So the Slim Jim, oats are pretty plain. The Slim Jim is the opposite of plain. It has a ton of flavorings in it, seasonings, and so those seasonings are going to come out in my food here, and it's actually going to make a really nice
Flavor?
really nice flavor. It's going to turn the oats brown.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Does like the coloring come out of the...
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so here goes my food.
You're gonna wait until that's done and then cook mine?
Nope. Let's go ahead and get yours ready. So Zach's is a meal ready to eat. You could eat this cold if you wanted to.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Now, if you were evacuating, would you just toss this can when you were done? What would you do?
I'd keep it and then like ferment foods in it, or put water in it.
Okay, so you would utilize the can for something else. That's smart. Okay.
There's chicken in this one.
It's tiny bits.
Mm.
You hold. Let's get some water in there.
And what do you have the water for?
It's very concentrated. Now you like your soup concentrated. You would add basically a can of, that can full of water into your soup pot. And then you're going to put this over your fire.
Does oats take longer than soup to cook? Or are they pretty much the same?
It's going to be close to the same. Now Zach decided to save his tin can, and he wanted to save it to make a broth later rather than pouring the water into it. You can see that there's still lots of juice and everything left inside of it.
You can just drink that?
Yep, you just drink the broth later on, and it's going to give him like a nice nighttime, warm-up treat.
Just get cold. Would they have slingshots and long-range weapons? Or...
And guns.
Really?
They don't have guns like we have today. They had
Musket rifles.
They might have had revolvers and bullets.
Gunpowder and pistons? And were they spread out all over the world? Or were they in small pockets?
Small pockets. Alright guys, so we ended up having to go out and collect a whole bunch more firewood. I think we'll be probably collecting firewood until we can't see anymore. Yeah, until we can't see anymore.
And probably we're going to collect more than we need and keep it over here just in case we need it.
That's right. Now while Zach was out collecting some firewood, I put a whole bunch of pine needles, reinforced our bed underneath with pine needles. Luckily, they're in great surplus around here. That way we're a little bit cushioned.
And got rid of some very spiky pine cones.
Oh yeah, we're still with the seeds inside of them. Here's a couple of them. You do not want to lay on one of those.
Oh no.
So we're going to go collect some more firewood until it's dark. And then I think we'll probably just tuck in.
Yeah.
And
depending on how cold it gets, maybe we can get in the bivy bag, or even if, and especially if I get in the bivy bag, if you get cold, you can have both the wool blankets.
That's true, but you'll probably want the bivy bag and the wool blanket.
Really?
I imagine so. Yeah,
really?
40 degrees.
True.
But this fire roars. We've got the heat pushing back at us.
It's crazy how much difference there is between the outside temperature and in front of this fire.
That's right. So we'll probably collect 4 times as much firewood as we have right now. But we have a whole bunch of down trees here that are off the ground. So we'll just go grab from them. And if I need to, I'll lower down one side of the shelter here so that we can stop any air movement if the wind kicks up. Other than that, I'm looking forward to see how the wool blankets do tonight.
Yes.
So we're going to go collect, and we'll see you guys in the morning. Good morning, everybody. So for the most part, it was a successful father and son wool blanket overnight.
Yes.
We did have a couple of things that we learned. One is that the frontiersmen were probably cold very often.
Yes.
Now, average frontiersman gear was not only your wool clothing, sometimes cotton clothing or other materials, but they would also have wool blankets stacked with canvas on top, because for the most part, humans are naked creatures. We don't have the fur that our animal friends live by, and so we are forced to recreate that fur with wool or animal furs, things like that.
Eat your spinach.
That's right, you better grow your fur now. So we kept the fire roaring all night, and that's really, if you're in a situation where you're subjected to the elements, and of course 40 degrees, you can get hypothermia easy.
Your body doesn't want to go below 70.
That's right, and so you need to rely on two things. Either have your fire foolproof, disaster proof, or have enough other materials to recreate animal fur. Now it might have looked silly, but there was a time or two where I was up here stoking the fire, moving around very briskly, doing a couple of jumping jacks just to keep the cardiovascular system working hard, warm me up. So that's definitely an interruption in your sleep. Zach, when we were talking this morning, said that he wanted everyone to know that you aren't going to get your 12 hours of sleep.
No. You're at most going to get 3 or 4, just with how much time you're going to be stoking the fire, getting up in the middle of the night to keep warm, or just warming up and moving around.
Yeah, so get used to broken sleep, but that's okay. Our bodies are prepared to do that. Just know that your sleep schedule might go from sundown to sunup, which is a good 12-hour period, but you're only going to get 6 to 8 hours out of that 12 hours because you're going to be up, broken in between, getting back to sleep. For the first couple of nights, it's going to be a little bit difficult, but then your body is just so tired from the immense amount of work that you're doing every day that you'll fall into that routine pretty quickly. So for us, it was a successful overnight.
Yes.
I think next time we might do a
tent.
Yeah, we might do a
Go
tent.
away from the frontiersman style a little bit.
Yeah, we might do the polar opposite and do modern equipment, maybe a hammock and an underquilt, maybe just some 0-degree bags, things like that, and have fun with that way. Maybe even a base camp setup.
Yes.
That'd be kind of fun with solar lights, things like that, so I think that'd be exciting.
Yeah, I think that would too.
Guys, I hope that you enjoyed coming with us. We are going to pack up our faux animal furs and
drink our second coffee.
Yeah, drink another coffee and then head out. So thanks for coming with us. As always, from Zach and I to you and yours, stay safe and keep watch.